Virginia. Okay,
We call it the skinless,
right.
the tail goes out.
It's gonna have to.
Yeah.
Really? That far, it's not a joke.
Yeah, it's down by Virginia Tech, but it's significantly away from
should start the meeting now that we think we have the technology figured out. And so I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:07 or so. And first order of business are public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion but not action. So any members of the public who want to provide anything? Okay. And Vika, do you want to go through your report first, or do you want Loren to do her presentation? It's up to you guys.
It doesn't matter to me. I might opt to do it just because if it's there and I'll break.
Okay.
I don't want something to happen.
So given that we have the map up on the screen, we're gonna move on to, we're gonna skip over the town reports for the moment, and we'll come back to those after just the first item under regular business. So 2593, we're gonna receive an update from Loren on the coastal access project's progress and to gather feedback from the select board. And so Loren's gonna give us an update on what she has been working on. I think she shared it with us in written form, right? Or at least I saw a copy of it, but anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So yeah, as you all know, one of the first things I was working on as my fellowship was a shoreline access inventory. And so I've been working on that since September. It really begun with me going to every single municipal right of way to develop just an inventory and document the type of access. So like, is it a town-owned parcel or multiple parcels? Is it a deeded right of way on someone's deed that there's like a 33-foot or 10-foot walking path or something like that? I also documented parking information, whether or not it's ADA accessible, and any issues. So like whether there's significant erosion or other kind of like unstable ground, lack of signage or unclear signage, and lack of clarity regarding access. So like whether or not, it might be, we all go there, but it's unclear if we actually have access to it. And so I begun with just documenting everything that I could gather from what's at the town office, but also going to all of these right of ways. And then from there, I created recommendations for all of the different right of ways, whether it's to increase signage or, the stairs are inadequate, or something like that. And, from there, I considered all the different options available that I could for a map. There's, pros and cons for a paper map. I think that paper maps are really cool. I like tactile things. I think they're helpful, especially just to have them sort of throughout the town. Same with like a digital map. I think digital maps are interesting and you can create fun icons, like using something like Adobe Acrobat and things like that. However, I really I want whatever I create, I want it to live significantly beyond my fellowship. And so I landed on GIS because I know that that's something that the town already uses. I am a novice at GIS truthfully, but I've had a fun time playing around with it and creating this map, which I'll get to in a little bit, but just to kind of give you a idea of what else I've been doing in terms of this project. I've tried to engage the community in a few different ways. I had a dessert and discussion event at the rec back in October. About 30 people came, which was pretty good for a Tuesday afternoon. And that was a lively discussion and I got lots of really good feedback. At that time, folks were interested in having me make sure that whatever map is produced, the easements and conservation areas that the Shipping Cumberland Land Trust own, to make sure that that's also on the map. And so based on that feedback, I had a few meetings with the folks at CCLT where we just kind of were encouraging collaboration and a shared map with both the municipal right of ways and the land trust easements. And so, and I've also, I've reached out to the community kind of more informally through the town website, but also the Shebig Facebook group, just to encourage folks that have ideas or thoughts or concerns about maybe their favorite beach to reach out to me. And so I've done about 5 of those sort of shoreline walks with folks that have reached out to me. I've also reached out to very specific folks in the community, like Dawn Damon, who know a lot about coastal access, and I've learned a lot from folks like her. And so, yeah, I've done a fair bit of chatting with all the folks that are interested in talking to me about things. And so I've landed on starting, and I really, if I could mess with this a little bit more, I would, and I'd show you the CCLT map, but the map that I've created here is really inspired by what the Shebig and Cumberland Land Trust has for their properties on Shebig as well. And so if I could just, this lets me, yeah, oh god. So these purple areas that you.
There is a mouse there.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize. Okay. Let's see.
If it's connected.
Oh, no, it's not.
Good on.
Yeah, it's on. It's got a little green, that's okay. I'm here and I'm around a few areas, but so every one of these little purple dot or little areas you can click on.
Oh.
So that's Chandler's Cove. And I wrote a little blurb for each, basically information about whether or not you can find parking there. You know, whether you should drive there, whether you should proceed on foot. And I just have, you know, a little photo for each of them. Basically just to give you an idea of what to expect. So I've done this for all of the different municipal, right away, so this is Waldo Point, there's 2 here, because there's 2 right of ways, as we know.
And when you say municipal right of ways, those are town legal right of ways. Whether
Yeah,
that's
town-
town property or town or somebody else's property.
Yes, so when I say municipal right of ways, I mean, the town either owns, so Waldo Point, the town owns. Just, sorry, it's very touchy. The town owns a parcel right here. And then there's other, so there's this picture that says, like, you know, if you walk down here, that will get you to the second Waldo Point. And so this is a good one too, because this is one that I did notice. Obviously, we all know Waldo Point has pretty bad erosion and the stairs aren't there. And so I just have a little sort of proceed with caution. Be careful and that there's no stairs there. And so those are just the kinds of things that I've documented, to make sure that folks are aware of it. And so if you go to the Shebig and Cumberland Land Trust website, they have something very similar, but theirs is orange and not purple. And so I've been talking with Penny and she is, pretty excited at the thought of us having like a shared map. I will say the only one that does not have, so this is division point, and like, you know, I say like there's marked parking and the mowed grassy area will take you to the stairs. The only one that's an outlier is the Cordis Road right of way, because that is one that is not currently, there is a deeded right of way, I have that documentation, but the right of way has gone into not disrepair, but it's overgrown. And so there's some work to be done before people can safely access it. And so that's the only one that I just have a little sort of caveat that currently the right of way is inaccessible and the photo will come soon. But right now it's not available. But it is a right of way. It's just one of those rights of ways that we have it, but you can't really get to it safely. So yeah, I met with Judy at Viewshed regarding how easy it would be to integrate this into the town GIS, and she was very open and saying that this would be super easy. I've made this a publicly accessible map because there's no sensitive information on it. And so anyone who I send the link to could be able to access it and click about it and, you know, go through it. And so she said that if, you know, whether we wanted to just integrate it into the town's GIS as like another layer, like the many layers that we already have, Or if we wanted to have a different tab on the website for this specific map where I could also put some other information on it. But we have lots of options. I can also make, edits to this. I can, based on your feedback and based on other people's feedback, but yeah, this is what I've kind of landed on. I created a paper map. I created all different kinds of maps, but I think that this is the one that is best suited to last the longest. And also to be able to make really quite simple adjustments as needed. So I thought.
Now, what are the two little dots, one by Spring Island, down there? You just
Oh.
those two dots,
Henderson Road, I think.
yeah,
Oh, this one,
yeah,
Fenderson and Geneseo Landing. Fenderson,
no, okay,
yeah.
well, that's just the landing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Central.
Central, yeah. And all these are all pictures that I've taken, either on my site visits or when I've gone there just for fun, so.
There's more places I know, been here 10 years.
Yeah, so now we have to do a site visit.
Yeah.
Have some fun.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if you have like questions or ideas, or if you think I should include something.
Can you scroll it, can you still?
Yes.
Huh? Don't you have the right way? So it's not.
So this is Soul Road. Nice stairs, got good stairs.
Because there is a right of way, from our, right.
So is your right of way,
It's not a municipally owned right of way. These are gonna be right of ways that the town owns.
Oh, okay.
And they're municipally owned, so there is a lot of right of ways that are either privately. Granted, like yours, where you have a sign allowing people to go onto your property, or there are many. Right of ways to shore accesses that are within individual deeds. There are. A couple of them, like there's one by the boatyard, there's one on Cottage Road, so specific deeds, specific properties. Have it within their deeds to grant them access through somebody else's property with access to shore. Those are not gonna be shared on this. This is for the general public. That anybody can access.
yeah,
With a lot of the private easement deeds, they're only specific to the people that have it within their deeds. Or it's private property owners granting permission. Those are not gonna be included on this. This is very specific to municipally owned access to shore. And the goal is to share this with you to see what's happened so far. But also kind of get your feedback in terms of. What are some ideas or suggestions you might have as we move this forward? Do you think that it would be helpful to have this incorporated with the town GIS where all of the property lines are visible and that's seen as well? Do you think it would be helpful to have this as completely separate documents so people just see the access? Would it be helpful to have it combined with the land trust? Or have it separate with the land trust? So that's kind of the purpose of this, is to just get a little bit of your feedback. And some sense of direction of what the board is thinking in terms of how we move forward and how this gets incorporated either completely on its own. Or intertwined with the land trust, when you see the final vision on the town website.
mhm.
What are your thoughts and suggestions about how you would like to see it as a final product?
With the GIS, you can layer, layers,
So
right?
that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
so you can layer, have all of them on separate layers, people who just wanna see one thing, they wanna see all the things.
Yeah, right.
That makes-
Just be able-
The other thing I think would be helpful is to have actually some name out in the water, but near each of these. So you don't have to, that you get some, know what it is without having to click into it.
Okay, yeah,
I think that'd be helpful. But, yeah, I mean, definitely with the land trust, that would be great to be able to just do layers and something.
And the property maps.
And the property, yeah, you're right.
And I wonder, you know, maybe making it available as a mobile app kind of thing, like for a phone.
Yeah, that's a good, I've
That'd be
never
cool.
opened it on my phone, so I'll have to do that.
Right, and
Yeah.
there are ways to do that, I don't exactly know how, but I think that you know, some people look at it on the web, but I think visitors might use their phone.
Yeah, oh yeah, for
All
sure.
coverage being what it is.
Yeah. So, I like the format, I like having the pop-ups and sort of making it easy to recognize what the you know, I'm in the right place,
Mhm.
you know, kind of thing. And I think, do all of them have right of way to shore signs? Donna was on a mission to put those out.
So most of them do, but some of them don't, or some of them like use, like they're in the picture, the Fenderson end of the road, the right of way sign is on the ground. I think it just fell out like from the storm or something. So I would say 75% of them have signs, but there are some like, like Central Landing doesn't have one. But for the most part, there are signs. And I just, yeah, I don't know if we have more of those signs, but I think like having consistency with, when there's a lack of signage, just having those signs.
And I think it says, the signs I'm thinking of sort of said right of way to shore, but it doesn't say town of Shabig Island, does it?
No, it's just like, yeah, it's just
Right.
big blue.
So I'm wondering, as part of this whole FEMA upgrade and some of the, maybe we could create a sign that says, you know, town of Shabig Island, right of way to shore, or something that's specific to the town. That
Yeah.
correlates with your map, and I think what would be helpful for the select board is. You know, you've done an inventory of all the kind of what the condition is and what your recommendations might be for improvements. It sounds like some need substantial, like we're gonna lose a path if we don't improve it, but like the stairs down at Division Point were a
Yeah.
little dicey.
Yeah.
So I think if you could, you know, over time, kind of create
Oh, yeah.
a work list of improvements that need to be made, and we can incorporate it into our, you know, project planning, because we will be doing work with the FEMA money, we will be going out to some of those and doing that. So,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can like, right now, I think my recommendations are like more of a sort of spreadsheet, but I think if I can make a report with like pictures and like.
yeah, and really just, you know, what kind of attention they need that would help guide us to ensure most familiar with it. And I think if you want to try to design a, you know, storefront access sign, you can look and see, I know the land trust has to use different formats and
Yeah,
different towns have different formats, but you could come up with something that,
yeah.
you know, works for you. But I think it's great. I mean, we haven't had anything like that that's been accessible, especially.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. I don't.
Lorraine and I do meet weekly, and we have talked about in terms of a final product. When somebody gets to this location, possibly having a few of the locations. Or even most of them, whatever, I think that's yet to be determined, but similar to the sign that's down at the hook. A larger scale sign, possibly having something like that in some of the locations, like Chandler's Beach or
Yeah.
whatever the areas end up being. But just having little signs that are there when people go down there with maybe a little bit information about what they are. Possibly even a QR code that could link to a more full detail information, where we had even talked about, Donna Damon has a lot of historical data that we can't really, you know, overwhelm in the initial image. But if we have a QR code and people can go to it, they can read a little history about each location, or maybe some background about the type of town acquired that property, some pictures, whatever. But those are kind of all little things towards the end that we can figure out, and how to make each individual location unique, appealing, informative. In addition to just knowing what needs to be done, really. If, whether you're somebody that's from here, or whether you're somebody from the inn walking down to Hamilton Beach. You know, what kind of information could be helpful for a person to see. So those are some of the things that we've talked about that are a likely possibility for a final product, in addition to this, multifunctional, web document to have something there present at the locations.
And I also wonder if it would be possible to be in touch with high school students if they were writing something for a class. If this could have a format that could be contributed to by a student from the island.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I've been talking with Corey at the library and I have, in December, I'm doing 2 little event, like story time on Saturday and I'll be with the school kids on Thursday, just, I'm still, thinking about what my activity will be, but I would love to be able to like hear from the like young people about like what their favorite beach is or what they think of when I say like going to the beach on Shebang. So I think it would be really cool to have, I don't know, if this is eventually on the town website, it could be cool to have pictures of, what these rights of ways looked like historically, but also through the eyes of like the youngest people on the island. So I think it would be cool to have like a mixture of, all different kinds of perspectives. So,
And there's some great videos that have been done by students as well that could have more.
yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Loren? Any questions from the public?
Yeah. Are there any state? Oh, yeah. Mike McKee, 107 Cottage Road. Are you aware of any state-owned right-of-ways or land on Speed? For instance, like Cottage Road in front of Habig, Hayden, Luntz, there's a promenade that's actually up on the coastal bluff that I believe the state owns. So that should also be public access. It's a level above municipal, but
Yeah,
I believe that is,
I don't think that's state owned, but Little Shebang is actually
Yeah.
quite the,
well, there was a strip of land that they donated to the state in the 60s for
Oh.
tax purposes. So therefore.
well, we
it
can
should
check
be
on that,
a
yeah.
right-of-way.
is it maintained by like this, like a parks, like who? I
Now,
guess,
people just mow their grass,
okay,
but it's the front side of their grass.
okay,
We can check
yeah,
the
I'll
deeds.
definitely look into it. Thank you.
And then there are the outer islands, some of those may have state, like, not stave, anyway, some of the islands, yeah,
Yeah.
so there's, I don't know, 14, 17 other islands in the town of Shebang, so we could inventory those too, and the land trust, has an easement on Stockman.
Right, yeah.
So, and I guess in a way that's access, it's just, water based
Water
That's,
access.
that's what happened for kayakers and
Yeah.
stuff, it's
So
kind of cool.
the water trail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there is the main island trail on
Right.
It's nice going out to Stockman and seeing little signs, CCLT, it's like, oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ties and vision.
yeah,
Then we have the guy on Sand Island, so he's
that's good.
great.
Cool, well, thank you for the feedback.
But thanks for all your work,
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
really great.
Like this side.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go backwards to number 3, which is town reports, and so we're gonna hand that off to Vika. For town reports.
All right, hi, everybody. So town, we just have the TA report this evening, and there was information in your packet. So the first thing worth mentioning, is we heard back from Shelley Piggery's office and, with the passing of the budget, it did pass, the budget in which, we had requested money for stonework, so Shebang is in line to receive $1 million, toward stonework. So we'll be hearing in the next couple of weeks in terms of the details and the process of that, but, this is a step closer than we had been the last time around, so it's looking really promising and hopeful, which is fantastic. It's $1 million of grant funding that we will be able to put towards work at the stone work, which is huge.
What's the match for that?
It's an earmark, so.
Earmarks, so there should be no match for that. It's the congressionally funded CDS money, so no match required. We do have a grant right now that we're using where I believe it's $75,000, which I think 25% match of that. But for this one, it's just straight $1 million.
Is there a time frame on when that has to be spent?
I don't remember, I'd have to look at the grant application,
Yeah.
but I think in terms of the process that we're trying to do and in phasing and the work that we're looking to do in the near future, I think it's timing.
So as long as we're like active, we have an active project that'll be. may not
It's,
be-
so when the grant was submitted, it was in line with the work that we're currently doing with the expectation of nearing the 30% design, so we're. We haven't fallen behind or anything like that, so I think we're right in line with what was expected when the grant was submitted to where we are now.
Yeah,
Am I correct, Carol? It was your name and BPU, and was Bob also on the application for the grant?
Well, it was a town application and we had submitted our request the prior year. And you might remember, they never passed the budget, so we
Right.
actually got selected, but we didn't get funded. So this time, for some reason, they funded what, the USDA?
It's the USDA, which
Which is-
because of the food,
Oh,
Yeah.
SNAP.
the SNAP program. I think is
I
what,
just want to acknowledge who completed the application and say that.
But it's interesting because I think other people have been selected for different programs, but those haven't been funded. So we were just lucky. I guess, because I think it was one of the few that was funded.
well, it's great.
So
Thank you.
we're lucky.
good news for the island.
It just seems like that's gonna make it easier to get bids once we get to the bid phase, cause we have real money.
I think it will make it easier to get more money.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because we have to have some skin in the game to get more money, so
That's one.
lucky.
All right, on to other things. So as always, committee board members, we're in need of planning board members, Board of Adjustment Appeals. We do have, facilities committee is now in need of at least one board member. So we do have some boards that are in need of people. We are looking for the facilities committee. We're looking at somebody potentially with either some experience on the fire and rescue or someone with some financial experience to offset the expertise of the people that stepped down that we had lost. There's gonna be a planning board hearing at the beginning of December. It's gonna be here at the hall. The notices have been sent out this week to all of the abutters, the information, including the applications that were submitted, are on the town website, and they are for 2 shoreline stabilization projects on Shebang. So if you want more information, it is on the town website.
One's the hook, what's the other one?
One is the hook and one is, it's a project on the east end, Reagan's. Chandler's dock repair, the dates keep getting changed. Right now, as things stand, between December 19th and January 1st is when the pilot work is gonna be done at Chandler's. I had spoken to the harbor master, he has notified all of the fishermen that would be impacted. I spoke to CMP, I spoke to DOT and I spoke to Baycroft, and we are all in line to make sure that if there are any power outages and CMP needs to get here within a time frame, that they have a designated location that they're able to tie up. So that's not an issue. And so we will just kind of keep open communication with DOT to make sure that if dates change, that we are able to advertise and let people know. But for the most part, the people who are directly impacted this time of year, we know that there might be some inability to be able to tie up down at Chandler's.
And that should include Fogg's water taxi as well. I don't know how much Fogg's is coming in.
I thought water taxi is in operated now.
It is.
It is,
Yeah, it is.
I can have the harbor master reach out to them.
Yeah, thanks.
And Vika, will that affect freight?
No, so Casco Bay Lines is still gonna land as normal. They have that worked out with Casco Bay
Yeah.
Lines. This is a direct impact to the town-owned
Yeah.
tie-up areas, which I was told today that they're not planning to physically remove them, but they
Yeah.
don't want boats tied up there, while they're doing the work. And well, they don't want us to advertise it, then they still want to give us the full 2 weeks. They're thinking that it might just take them a couple of days to do it, so, the inconvenience might not be as long as, what they're asking us to accommodate for.
Great. They've been great about communicating.
Yeah, so it'll be nice when that's done. So broadband, I did send out a statement and an invoice to Axiom. I did put the information that was sent out into the shared folder that, the select board have access to. A couple of weeks ago, I sent you an email with specific directions of how to access it, so you can find that email and you could find those directions, and then there is a folder for Axiom, and in that folder is a statement and an invoice, so you can see what was sent out, so. So that's the most current update on that. We did have a meeting with DEP, so Carol, Paul, Ren, and I met with Rob Wood from DEP to really discuss on the growing number of shoreline stabilization projects and have a better understanding on effective tracking mechanism for the municipality, for DOT and everyone involved. So then we have a better idea of what is at the DOT level, so we know what the expectations are in terms of who is supposed to send out the notices, when we're supposed to get notified, because with a lot of these, once it gets sent, there is a very short time frame for a window for comments. And so the more we know what's going on at the state level, the better idea we have to be able to prepare on the municipal level and know whether they're gonna go to the planning board or just the code enforcement officer, and have an idea of what's to come in the future relative to the information from the state of Maine.
May I ask, when notices are going out, I continue to hear that's a concern where it's mailed to. So when notices are mailed to abutters, is it always to their off-island address? If they don't live here,
So
should it go to both addresses?
where their tax bills go.
Yeah.
And that,
Good, got it.
yeah,
And is information about when you said they provided helpful suggestions, is that in the share folder? Or
who provide,
your last outcome was that the DEP provided helpful?
no, that's not in, that's just, they provided the suggestions to us to have a better understanding in terms of how to deal with them.
Okay,
Uh,
that's fine.
And I guess I would also say though, Loren has been, just to answer your question, you've been keeping track of the DEP permits. And so, property owners can look at Loren's list to, you're up, why don't you explain?
Yeah, there's a link on the code
Can
enforcement.
you maybe come up
Oh,
here?
yeah, sorry.
We probably should do that, right?
Loren Rochetta. There's a link at the code enforcement officers tab on the town website that will take you to a Google Doc, that's a spreadsheet that I update, and that link gets updated as I update it. With any time I see something on DEP's website, and I check every week.
And how many do we have in the pipeline right now?
I don't
Okay,
know. Not, I mean, I know, but not,
but you don't, okay,
Right.
yeah, that was unfair to ask first.
no, that's okay.
I'll then take one.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
thanks.
So, and a couple things just relevant to notification, the new rules that went into effect in June. Changed the notification distance to just the butters as opposed to used to be 1,000 feet. So only the abutters will get notified. The other thing is though that they do no longer require certified mail, so it becomes a little harder for people to verify that they did or didn't get it. And then they are required, this has always been the case, the applicant is required to notify the municipality. I will say it's clear that that has not always been happening. But the problem is we don't know that we haven't been notified because, you know, we don't know. And we went over that with that issue because that's why one of the reasons the Ren has been tracking these, because if someone doesn't notify the town, we would not know. Also, the DP has a new online platform for tracking applications, which, once they work out all the bugs, I think will be quite good. But then the advantage of the new system, it's called MELS, is that you can see the application and all the associated documents online. So you don't have to go to the, DEP to see stuff. So you have immediate access to it. But the way it's being indexed can be a little tricky. If you do know what's the actual permit number, which Loren is typically tracking, then you can look it up. But if you don't, you can miss things. And so I think we went through a bunch of those things with them at the meeting, and I think that system is improving over time, and our ability to, manage it is also improving over time. So, it's really just better communication between the two groups, and we do have a lot of applications for the size community we have. They acknowledge that.
Eliza, Richard, and I met with the CPC board. I wouldn't say any resolutions came out of it, but really more of an eye-opening conversation where we really talk about a lot of the infrastructure assets, just everything that's intertwined between CTC and the town, all of the different inter-town agreements between Yarmouth and CTC, between Shebig and CTC, between Shebig and DOT, and Shebig and DOT and CTC. And so recognizing that there are a lot of different things that are in the works, and some of them are really outdated, so it's worth revisiting them, at least to the point where everybody is on the same page and is aware of what those agreements are, and how they each intertwine and play a role. And so both boards, agreed that, it's worth revisiting and kind of keeping an open communication. We do have a meeting that is we scheduled for January to really look, rather than kind of this larger item of these are all of the issues that we need to look at. These are all of the agreements we need to look at as the time gets closer. We'll pinpoint to something a little bit more smaller scale and relevant, and really start discussing little pieces at a time to see how CTC and Shebig can better work together to support and provide to the community. I will, if Richard and Eliza, if you guys have anything else to add to that, please do.
I thought it was a very helpful meeting to hear concerns and ideas on both sides, and I really liked your agenda. It was we have a lot of ground that needs to be covered, and we got through number one, maybe some of number two, but that was good for all of us to see. So I look forward to the meeting in January to see what we can do together. Right, Richard?
Right.
We like.
No, it was a great meeting. It was not overdue, but it was well worth having this kind of solid communication with them, because we are both so integral to the comings and goings on Shabby. So it's good to have that
Good time.
connection.
Is there some sort of outline of the discussions that need to be had, or, you know, like, or even just line items that will need to be discussed at some point?
Yes, but there's no, we didn't come up with that list, and once that list is generated of the things that could be accomplished, then it needs to be prioritized.
Right.
And so I would suspect that's gonna be one of the steps we take next. We really were just
Right.
talking about all of the things that need to be addressed, but a very big one is that whole issue of agreements that need to be looked at again, and so much has changed since many of those original agreements were made, and including the town of Cumberland. There's some that go back to that time.
Right, so there'll be some progress reports to this debate.
Yeah.
So the next thing is float removal, so we are nearing the end of November, which means beginning of December is when the floats typically come out. Last year, the board voted on having a contractor remove those floats and place them back in, so this is the first year that we're going through that process. Public Works has been in contact with that particular company. They are scheduled to begin sometime after December 1st, weather permitted, which is in line to the policy that exists about when those are going to come out. I did speak to Justin from Coastal Waters, and they are going to have a meeting sometime in the next month that I'm going to attend, which will likely probably take place after when the floats come out, but we'll see how that all staggers. At this point, they're aware and they're in support of having some form of float stay in at the Stone Pier. Prior to a couple of years ago, all floats were getting removed, but the last couple of years, some floats did stay in. Last year, the floats that typically have stayed in are now new, and so last year they got replaced. There was some concern about keeping new floats in and having them be damaged. I have spoken to some fishermen and a couple of people that know far more about water and floats than I do. And the concern about the floats being damaged is really from ice, which we haven't had, and that's something that could be worked out. If that issue happens. Another big reason for keeping a float or two in is if we are going to not have a location for fishermen during the winter time. The majority of the fishermen that fish year round are either in Portland or at Chandler's. If we're going to tell them that they're not gonna have a location to tie up for 2 weeks, it would be nice to tell them that you can go to the Stone Pier and there is a location for you to be there. There are some fishermen now that fish year round out of the Stone Pier. So I think with the changing in climate and the lack of the ice, I think there is a strong support from the fishing community and from Coastal Waters to have some kind of float in the water year round as long as it's possible. And so if the board is okay with that, I will continue having conversations with Coastal Waters and the fishermen to make sure that we still provide that, and Public Works obviously is involved in the process. But once we know the exact dates, we'll advertise, we'll put it online, we'll send out a text alert to let people know that floats are gonna be removed. And then we'll provide, whether I'll probably let Public Works and Coastal Waters and Harbor Master figure out which floats are the best floats to stay in. But once we have that idea, we'll make sure that the general public knows that that's happening, so.
Is there a process for if we do get ice, which, you know, could happen? Is there a process to protect those floats? Is there a method that people are aware of it. Do our best to protect
The
them.
best answer is no, but I think that's something that between public works and communication with the contractor that's pulling them in and pulling them out, and then coastal waters and harbor master, will make sure that there's some plan in place that if there is, this is the winter where we start getting ice, that there's something that happens, to make sure that, because right now, I think either whether it's the float in front of CTC, the new ones where the files just got replaced, or whether they're the other ones, they're both brand new. So whatever floats are gonna be staying in are gonna be floats that are new floats to stay in, so ensuring that we don't keep them in for the benefit of people, but then damage them and have it be an expense to the town is definitely a balance that we have to make sure we pay attention to.
Vika, could you just remind me, when the floats are taken out, are they still stored? By the company taking them out?
So my recollection is they're gonna be stored at Public Works still.
Right.
Because that was the easiest, most cost-effective and efficient thing to do.
So if we were getting another set of storms or storm like we had in the January storms a few years back, would there be the potential to take a float out of the water by Public Works to protect it?
I think the potential is there, but I don't wanna answer
I'm not
for certain.
expecting, but the
because,
potential,
yeah.
that might just be something to consider, especially having new floats, or do we have an old float that we could put there?
I would recommend putting something old that potentially isn't gonna be safe to be in during kind of, the people that I've spoken to, they said that the biggest issue is the wind. Which some of the winds that we're getting now is no different from the winds that we would get in January, is what I was told.
Okay.
So Carol,
So I remember last year, we took our boom truck and they decided it wasn't safe enough to use, and so then we used the boatyard's boom truck. So is there a plan, do you know what the plan is for this year to actually remove them?
I don't know the details of the plan, I just. Have talked to Public Works and Coastal Waters.
So I assume there's some arrangement where you're paying the boatyard to use their truck, or, I mean, I feel like the town should the boatyard's been very good to the town, but I feel like we should compensate them if they are. Last time they came and helped us out in the jam.
Yeah,
But,
I'll find out.
Yeah, and at some point, that may be something we should be thinking about. Do we need to be sort of
Formalizing.
have either have a permanent agreement with the boatyard or have some other means to take floats in and out, because that was a problem last year. And last year, we didn't remove them till like January, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very late.
So anyway, I think this is the second year of this, what's his name, Zach?
Zach had it.
Yeah, and so I think that this is really going off the Coastal Waters recommendation, Coastal Waters Commission, that we try to, develop a relationship with a local contractor who can be our person. So we'll see how it goes. This is the second year, and they have been working on our float replacement plan, so they have a whole strategy for, and most of them, I think they have applied for and received grants from DOT to pay for the total float replacement, so they've been doing it at sort of no cost to the town. So it's been a pretty good system they've developed.
Yeah, we recently, so this late summer, we applied for another grant through the state, and we did get confirmation that we received that grant, and so most of these floats have been between $15,000 and $17,000. And the town has only had to cover the match, so anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000 is what has cost the town for the cost of each of those floats, because Coastal Waters has done the legwork up front for the grant process. So hopefully, if it all still staggers and works out well, come springtime, we'll have the third float replaced. When they get back in, a new one will replace one of the old ones when they're put in, and then I think we'll only have 2 floats that will need to be replaced until they're all brand new. So. Any other questions?
Just quick question, it's a little topic, but it involves DEP. Have you heard any sort of timeline on the Bennett's Cove advisory from them?
The meeting we had with GEI, she said, she thought before the end of the year. And so I would expect even potentially by the end of the month, but it's hard to know. They may have had to send it up to the Attorney General's office, but I would expect before, there is a certain time frame they're supposed to respond in, so there's a statutory requirement. So.
Dave?
Has this been publicized either on Facebook or?
It's on the
this
town's
website?
website.
It's just on the town website?
Yeah.
And I would suggest that you also give it to Beverly and Facebook.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the only other thing that I'll add to the TA report is, the RFP for the reevaluation is up on the MMA website. I did have the town assessor look at it just to make sure that it looks okay, and it did. So it's up. The next thing is, we will need to, advertise an RFQ for assessing services because, the current assessors did agree to stay on with us for a certain amount of time. And that time will be coming to an end in the near future. They are willing to work with us over the next several months while we try to find a replacement. I was in contact with Cumberland County. And Cumberland County was really, so Cumberland County has, similar to the sheriff contract that we have through the county, they have somewhat new assessing service that they do. They only have a handful of municipalities that they work with. They don't have a big office, they don't have a large, I think 5 people that work within that office. And so they were very willing, and they are still very willing to take us on as a municipality. However, they don't want more than one municipality that they have on going through a reeval, and unfortunately, right now, they have another municipality that is going through a reeval, and they don't have the capacity to take on another municipality that's going through that, so they're happy to take us on after we do a reevaluation, so unfortunately, that puts us in the position of needing an assessor over the next 2 to 3 years. So now that I have that information confirmed, and I had a conversation with the assessor yesterday, I'm gonna draft up an RFQ. And then we'll kind of make sure and start advertising for an assessor to replace the current one, so. And that's what I have for the TA report.
Okay. So we'll move on back into regular business, 2594. To finalize the select board shoreline resilience resolution to strengthen shoreline resiliency and implement any required actions. And so last meeting, we had a draft of the shoreline, what's it called? Select board resolution on the shoreline stabilization and shoreline resilience, and then Loren integrated comments from a number of parties, including the select board and the planning board. And so what's in your packet is the revised version of this resolution. So I think I'll open it up for any comments from the board on the draft that we have in the packet now. And Loren or Vika put together a memo outlining what those changes were. So that I'm not gonna go through those unless people wanted to, but they were summarized in the memo that went with the resolution. So if people have any questions, while Loren is here, that would be good, or comments or changes. And the goal was to get it to a pretty final version so we could potentially, adopt it at this meeting. But if people wanna, spend some more time with it, we can delay.
Thank you. It was such a helpful day to be participating in the event at Diamond Island with the Island Institute and Gulf of Maine Research and having the day with Emma and listening to her talk. So I know that the planning board feedback wants this document to avoid language that appears to favor one approach over another. But clearly, it sounds like there are situations where one approach should be favored over the other. So I just want to go on record by saying, while I'm not here to challenge the planning report's request for that language. It does seem to me from listening in all of these locations at the GEI, the Island Institute event, and with Emma's job, and I've forgotten what her job title is, but yes, that it does sound like sometimes one approach is favored. I'm not saying which one, but it does sound like there are clearly some pros and cons that need to be considered. But I'm not gonna ask for that language to be in this document.
Okay, I don't know if you got my feedback, but I thought you kind of threaded the needle well with this, where recognize there's unique situations and everything, in every, circumstance. And that we have a preference, there's sort of this general industry preference as it's appropriate. So I thought you did a really good job incorporating those inputs and leaving that wiggle room in there. So, I think if I was an owner dealing with one of these things, I can appreciate this without feeling like I'm being painted into a corner,
Good, that was my intention.
That's great. I would like to see if there's someone putting, considering this work that would be willing to be a model to be working with as the town to make it more public and maybe have more conversation happen around it. But I don't know if that.
Well,
makes sense.
there is a new program that would, include, so there's money available for people who are pursuing nature-based solutions. So that's kind of there's a financial incentive through the state. And so that's something we could explore for a town project or for a joint project. I think, and this, just bear in mind, this resolution applies also to the town infrastructure projects that we're considering. And we need to keep that in mind as we do that, if we decide to adopt this, so. And we did, subsequent to last week's meeting, we had a visit with Emma. How do you say her last name? Paulmus. And so and she did a workshop for the community also, and I thought that was great. And even on some of the sort of lower effort, lower cost options of vegetation management and that sort of thing that I think people would pursue if they knew about it. So I think we got to remember this is also, things like vegetation management and drainage and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought her time on the island was very valuable to the community and to the town.
Just generally speaking, I mean, how do we anticipate these projects, if somebody has some erosion, they just take it upon themselves to, reach out and find an engineer, start planning it. How early in that process do they come to the town? And could we, as a town, sort of have a formal process where we would like you to look at these options, these priorities first as a first take before you pursue, some hardscape solutions. In other words, to build it into our permitting process
Yeah,
in a way.
I think that could be interesting. I don't wanna misspeak, but right now, I don't believe that there's any requirement for folks to do that. And under the current permitting, regulatory framework. But I think it would be a really interesting and collaborative and certainly a really good community effort if folks would be interested in communicating that and walking through what the options could be.
Yeah, because, when you're filing for any permit, right, and especially if it's more involved, there's sort of checkoffs where you have to go through and get some oversight on terms of plans and approvals to proceed. It just seems to me we could build it into our process.
I think that's a
Yeah.
great suggestion, and it's sort of like a pre-application,
Sure.
like when I think of the planning board, the sort of, site plan review, you can do a pre-application meeting where you go through kind of what your conceptual plan is and, the code enforcement officer, and if there's a planner, they can provide kind of, feedback so that you don't develop a whole plan to find out something, like the library, for example, the setback issue. If you pick that up day one, then you would, have to redo things. So I think that's a good suggestion because it's a win-win sort of it also, reduces the back and forth with the town. And that, I think the framework for that would probably be this Our Shore guide that the state has developed, which has kind of this, it's like a matrix where you go through and like, if this, then that, and so it helps, it's meant to help property owners figure out, what types of, practices they can use for their particular site. So it's kind of the first cut, but we could potentially, guide them through that. That would be exactly what the state would recommend. So Emma was doing that
Yeah,
during
that's-
her site visit, but she could only do whatever it was, 4 or 5 site visits. So I think if we could follow up with that for, and we did have one person who, is fairly far down she hasn't applied for a permit yet, but she had a lot of very good questions. I think, and that it's, much better in the beginning, obviously, than after the fact. So I think that's a good suggestion that we can consider.
So that is such a good point, Earhart. Looking at the Our Shore guide is mentioned in here, and it really is a good website to encourage more people. So I think making sure that this document is available readily so that people can use that assessment tool.
Yep.
When they're looking at it.
But I do think, even as Earhart suggested, providing maybe some assistance to even using that tool, because it might seem a little overwhelming to like the average property owner.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Loren you're going to a workshop tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, getting
I'm sure
trained
that
on the use of the Our Shore tool, so.
Yeah. I could learn all about it.
Great, all right, so do I have any, anybody have any motions or questions, or where are we at on this?
I make a motion.
Yep.
Oh,
Well, I
Let-
think
let me make a motion.
let's first make a
Anyway.
motion and then we can entertain comments.
I'd like to make a motion for 25-094 to approve the shoreline resilience resolution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Earhart, and any more discussion from the board?
I just think I'd like to see this document across other communities as well, and thank you for taking the leadership on this.
Anybody else on the board, comments or questions? No. Okay, public? Whoops.
Mike McKee, 107 Cottage Road. I have concerns about this resolution. Number one, in the select board ordinance, under enumeration of powers, it doesn't specifically talk about resolutions. Now, I understand if you pass this, it's not binding. It has no teeth. It's not an ordinance. And I just fear that this resolution will be used by the select board to represent the town to the state or to property owners or whatever. Now, clearly in there it says, we resolve as a select board. You don't resolve as a town. That can only be done at a town meeting. I think as written, and I went to the planning board meeting and I went to the meeting with Emma, it just smacks to me of special interest. You don't talk about reconstruction, which is the viable option. So if you have a sand dune that washes out, you can use your natural solutions, but you can also reconstruct, right? And so I think when something like this has that special interest twinge to it, and Earhart, you kind of alluded to it. I think that would motivate landowners to do as much as they could, as fast as they could, because they don't know what's gonna come from you guys. Right, so to me, I'd hardscape in a heartbeat. If there were softer approaches to this, then I might do the natural solution, or I definitely pursue reconstruction. Right, if nature takes that sand dune, rebuild the sand dune. They do it in North Carolina, up and down the East Coast, all over the place. But to me, this just sounds like special interest, and I don't support it, and it wouldn't have any teeth even if you pass it. Okay.
Thank you for your comment. Eliza Jane, did you?
But what I like about you saying is really looking into the implications of this. And I feel comfortable having it at the level that it is. We're still at the beginning of the curve of how to deal with these issues. We don't know the long-term impact of any of these solutions and where it will be in 10 and 20 and 50 years from now. So I hope, I like that it's worded in the way it is as a resolution. I don't think the public always makes that distinction between how limited a resolution really is, but I hear your concern. But I'm comfortable as a select board person, given all that I've learned through this process, to have it be simply a resolution with no eye in the future right now for trying to make it a policy.
Okay, so follow on. So if you pass this resolution and someone puts in for a shoreline project, and it goes up to DEP for their permit, is there any plan to, as a select board or as a town administrator, to send to DEP, this is what the resolution says, to try to influence their decision on the permit? Like, what are you gonna use this resolution for?
So to answer that question, this was recommended, as it said in the last meeting's memo. It was recommended both by our town attorney and the Greater Portland Council of Governments Planning Commission, because the town has a number of their own projects and a number of, private projects that are related to stabilization. And they felt it would be beneficial for us to consider, what our philosophy is about these types of projects. I think the way it's written, it offers a broad range of solutions, but it does encourage people to consider the more nature-based options. This is consistent with the state guidance right now. I mean, it's basically fashioned around where the state is going in terms of direction. So I don't see that it has any impact. I mean, the state reviews those applications based on the state regulations and rules. And those are the criteria that they apply. I think what we're hearing, we had a workshop in June. It was pretty well attended. Most of the select board was there. And we have a couple things, we have people that can't afford to do some types of stabilization projects and are feeling threatened by some of these other types of projects. We have people that are gonna be impacted. We had one property owner that Emma spoke with, that is concerned about the impacts of a permitted project on their property. So I think it's a very complex, situation. And I think all we're doing is trying to kind of bring it to a higher level so that people understand there's more than one option. And that when possible, we would encourage, more nature-based solutions, because they tend to be less damaging to the overall beach environment. I mean, it's really the issue of cutting off sand supply. So but it's not a tool to prevent someone's application from getting approved, but it does reflect not just the select board, but really feedback from the community as a whole. So that's how I would answer that.
I'd like to know who you are referring to as special interest. Who has a special interest in doing this?
I think the select board has special interest.
What is special about it?
Well, because you're favoring one option over the other.
How so?
For what,
The way it's written, it clearly says you support the nature-based solutions. That's one option.
not a special interest.
That's a special interest because you are interested in doing that. So there's state rules and there's our ordinance rules, right? And so the state is gonna follow their rules and planning board or whoever, code enforcement officer is gonna follow the ordinance rules. You weighing in and saying, we, the select board, feel it's this is the appropriate path.
Mhm.
I think it's a myopic view of things. And I think it could limit future, what goes on in the future, if there's other solutions that pop up. Simply like reconstruction.
And I do see your point. A couple of years ago, a couple of us circumnavigated the island, and it was so eye-opening to see what's happening along our shore. And I see so many opportunities. So the projects we're hearing about now are big projects that are happening where the erosion is happening quickly and having a great impact. But there are many spots of property owners who, if they knew to have certain plantings or to do certain things, that it would help to maintain their bank as opposed to letting it go and letting nature do some of that ravaging of their shore. So I see this as really helpful for those owners for whom are mowing to the edge of the grass or cutting things that are helping to hold the banking. I see that that's where it's helping many of those owners with this type of understanding of how to help to maintain their bank before it gets to the point of having to do some of the big jobs that we're seeing now. I didn't mean to insinuate that those jobs are done because of the way their shoreline is treated, but I hear a lot from shoreline owners who find this kind of information very helpful and is a lower impact and a lower cost preventive measure. So in addition, so I hear what you're saying about, it seems like we are being favoring one thing. I see this as favoring having to be an understanding among all landowners that these are things they can do now before having to go to the point of a big job to do shoreline erosion job prevention.
Yeah, I guess with some of the editing that was done since the last time we saw this. Basically, I think the thing, your concerns and one that I shared to some degree was, whether we're saying we're sort of pigeonholing people and saying, no, you need to do this. And I don't think the language in this, as I read it now, says that. It does say that we have a value for a consideration for nature-based solutions whenever practicable. But that doesn't exclude the option to do others. And ultimately, that's going to be an engineering issue. And ultimately be a DEP who's going to essentially, nix it or not nix it, right? So, the point was to try to communicate a value for a less invasive solution wherever possible. And I don't see that in the current language with the editing that's happened, it precluding someone from doing a hardscape or, rebuilding a dune or whatever. All of those things would have to go through a formal process anyway. It would all have to be engineered. It would ultimately have to get DEP's approval. And we're just trying to educate the community and also reflect some of the community's values that, like if my neighbor is going to put in this big retaining wall and now all that wave action is coming onto my property. And that's a legitimate concern, right? If there is a nature-based solution that would prevent that from happening, I would want that person to consider that. And as a town, we ought to be at least making people aware of those considerations and, put it in the mix of the things the solutions are looking at. And that's really the point of the resolution.
I just think the omission of things like reconstruction. So take Sandy Beach. Those sand dunes got washed over, especially down by that parking area. If you use a nature-based solution, which Emma talked about, with an engineered core and rebuild that sand dune, that wouldn't happen again, right? It was a one-off storm so far, the biggest one ever, right? Hasn't happened again in 2 years. So rebuild that sand dune. Why you can't,
But there's nothing here that says you can't.
I know, but the fact that there's nothing in there that says you can is where I get into that special interest.
Well, that's what
And
would
that's
be.
what it seems like to me.
That's what would be called sort of a hybrid solution, and that is sort of the compromise between the two, and. You know, so I don't disagree with you that that might be a good solution for that location, but that's not what's being constructed. I would use the example of the hook. As, basically, they had a bulkhead there, which they were seriously considering reconstructing. And after the storm really of December 22, and then again 24, I mean, the decision was made to let the system go back to a more natural state. And so I think that's an example of, that kind of approach. And I think it's I think the resolution provides for the full spectrum. I will say that the nature-based solutions are a new kid on the block, so not everybody's aware of them. And so I think that's also highlighting that. And I would add that the DEP rules have been changed just recently to make it easier to permit nature-based solutions as a mechanism to encourage, people to consider it where possible. Same idea. So I don't see it as a special interest, more as expanding the possibilities and encouraging the full spectrum, particularly less invasive methods when possible. So we appreciate your comments, and we do appreciate you coming tonight to express them. So thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second on and I think Eliza gave, this still says draft, but I think we can make a final, but the title that Eliza gave it was shoreline resilience resolution. So I think that's what it should be called. So we'll get that up there as the title. So are there any more questions from the board?
I
Okay,
did print out a copy without the draft information.
Great.
With the intent to bring it with me, but I forgot it at the office.
oh, okay, so, well, and I've got something I've got to have people sign too, so can I call for a vote on this? Okay, so all in favor? Okay. That's that, so we will need to stop by the office to sign this. And I'll mention later, we have another thing to sign. So we're gonna move on to 2595, and this is the budget schedule for fiscal year 27 budgeting process. And Vika put a draft timeline in our packet. And I don't know if people have had a chance to look at it. We were averaging, I guess, a select board meeting almost every week in January through March, I'd say last year, pretty much. And that seems like a lot. And so we do have some meetings that, I think absolutely have to happen. I do have a couple questions for folks before we even get into the proposed schedule. One is, having done them both ways, we were sometimes doing a budget meeting when we had a regular select board meeting. I found it pretty unproductive because they'd be like 3-hour meetings. And usually we're doing the budget after the select board meeting, so I'd recommend and I think Vika would agree, that we not do that we not try to combine any regular meetings and budget meetings. So I don't know how people feel.
Will we just stagger the meetings then? So.
Right, and
Basically meeting every week, but one time for.
I'm not sure we need a meeting every week. How is this created? I mean, I haven't really gone back. It's almost every week on this schedule.
This particular schedule that you'll see is created very similar to what has been the process the last number of years. So if you look at the schedule, I did bold, I did shift a couple of dates, so they weren't on regular select board meetings. I bolded the 3 meetings that would fall in line with being on a regular scheduled meetings. Those particular meetings really require approval or a review, so they're not going into a full detailed budget discussion. Towards the end in May, that's really when you're finalizing, there's not gonna be a lot of changes and adjustments, so I'm not as concerned about staggering that with a regular board meeting. A meeting with the school might be something worth considering. I didn't remove any dates, so this is very similar to the schedule that has been historically before. What I did do is I changed it towards the beginning of the budget process and really squeezed more capital in there. Versus focusing on the overall draft and the nitty gritty of each department. What is different in here, and I don't know if you've had a chance to read the brief memo, is so really putting a stronger emphasis on having capital discussion be the focus from the very beginning, from the very start, rather than exhausting by going through the regular departments and then exhausting yourself by the time we get to the capital discussion. Starting by really talking about an introductory to the budget process. So rather than starting with a general meeting and talking about what are your goals, what are your suggestions? Rather than putting it on you, more putting it on us, giving you an intro to what the process is gonna look like. To what the recommendations have been from the finance committee, to what seems like a good process that would work. And then utilizing your feedback through that. Then moving to having a finance committee do a presentation based on their findings and providing their recommendation. We did commit on one day with the finance committee. When we met, they did recommend that maybe split it into two different presentations where it was a little bit more time and talking about the budget than talking about the capital and what their recommendations and requirements are. And after having that, then focusing into the budget process, starting with a first draft, which just a draft with me kind of taking the information, putting it into the draft and see where we're starting out with. And then having that first Saturday where we historically spending a lot of time talking about the departments, having that be a morning focusing on the capital. So instead of sitting there and going through line by line item of admin, fire department, solid waste, going through each individual line item and talking about where you can cut $300 or $1,000. You're focusing on the capital and spending a number of hours on a Saturday morning, really talking about the capital. Because that was, $750,000 of the budget, of the $4 million budget, so, and so not a lot of dates have been removed. I think if the board is comfortable. The other thing, before I move on, the other thing worth mentioning is, I removed the nonprofit presentation. So last year, the board went through a process. And the board agreed on a form to send to the nonprofits and have them fill that out. So then when the information comes to the board, it's all very similar and it's not based on, thank you, Loren, based on what each nonprofit decided to give you. So it really streamlines what you are expecting to see. So the need for a presentation on a Saturday morning where you spend several hours really going back and forth. If you think there's a need for it, great, let's do it. But that did get removed and really, once again, capital got squeezed in replace of that. But as far as, if you wanna cut out a couple of dates, one thing that is going to be very different this year from other years is by December 15th, the departments are going to submit their budget requests. It is something that has been recommended by the finance committee. They have created documents that have been sent to the departments by the bookkeeper to fill out what their capital so the document will be for the departmental budget request changes from last year to this year, and then capital changes. So it'll be really for a couple of different reasons. One is it makes those departments be accountable for doing the background and for doing the detail work. We are doing it as a trial run right now with the request for exploring the idea for a town vote. So the fire department is filling out that document through the finance department as they would. Then any of those capital requests would go to the finance committee, and the finance committee would review them and determine based on the overall picture, how would that fit in? And then they would provide a recommendation. And so by the time it gets to the select board, it has been through more than just me sitting down with one individual from the department, getting a rough estimate of, let's put 50 grand in, putting it in and bringing it to you. So there is a lot more detail that will go into it. So I think if you want to cut out any meetings, I think the departmental discussions is where there could be some room, just because it is gonna go through a couple extra eyes before it gets to you. But this is kind of generally what all of the updates have been. In here, the italicized ones, they're not meeting dates.
Right.
They're just kind of for your knowledge, behind the scenes, what's happening and when the information needs to be signed. And so, yeah, that's
So
the detail.
a couple things I wanted to point out is, so Vika, right now, the dates that are shown during the weekday would be alternate with the scheduled select
Correct.
board meeting. So for example, January, we'd have a meeting. Would there be is that the first meeting in January?
So January 7th is a regular, yes, so I forgot to highlight that. That would be a budget presentation by the finance
At a
committee, to a
regular
regular meeting
And then there'd be another select board meeting.
on the 21st.
And then we'd have
The
another one
28th,
on the
yeah.
28th.
And then February 4th. So yeah, it is staggering it where sometimes every single week.
But so there are 2 Saturday meetings here and we have changed them. So the first one would be February 7th and it's capital expenditures. And so that would be a pretty important meeting. Given that, that would be where we, kind of hammer out the capital expenditures for, between the finance, I'm sure the finance committee would be joining us and, that's where we prioritize, well, are we gonna do the Stone Pier and South Shore Drive, or are we what do we have to do with the barge ramp? What do we have to do? Are we gonna buy any gold for the fire department? And so it's gonna be all of those things and, really trying to figure out the fiscal impact of those will be important, but we do sort of flipping this. We used to do the capital at the end, and there was also not a particularly great mechanism for coming up with the amounts, other than we knew we needed a lot of money, but we did, to the town's credit, we have saved a significant amount of, how much do we have in our reserve accounts altogether? About
Almost 2 million.
almost $2 million bucks, so, we're not slouching, but I do think the Saturday meetings personally can be, are important and can be very productive, but it won't be great if people can't make them. So that's one thing that, the February 7th and the March 7th meetings, and, they could be moved, but that's why I'm asking if people can confirm that they'd be available and don't have an objection to meeting on a couple Saturdays.
And that has been historically, that I did not change. So
Right.
previous board members, there were 2 Saturday budget meetings. The other option is, if the board wants to, is you can, January, February, March, you do have the discretion if you want to hold one regular board meeting and one budget meeting. That is something, if you advertise in advance and we plan accordingly, so then you can know that, second week in January is gonna be the regular scheduled meeting, so we'll stagger the agendas based on that. But then this meeting is gonna be focused solely on the budget. So that's for you to figure out in terms of, Are
Yeah.
you gonna get overwhelmed with too many meetings and is that gonna be unproductive, or do you wanna consolidate a little bit and focus on having 2 meetings, knowing that you're gonna have to push through them, so.
And we've done it both ways. Invariably, sometimes one specific item will come up that we have to attend to, even in, say, the beginning of a budget meeting, but we don't. It would be like you have to approve something or a expenditure or something, but we don't generally get into the kind of thing we did tonight. So, you know, if people feel like they know what their schedules are and are comfortable with this, or if you have suggestions how you want to change it. I mean, I don't think we want to tie up too many weekends, but at the same time, I personally have found the Saturday meetings to be more productive because it's in the morning, we're not doing anything else, and, you know, at least for me, I'm not, maybe it's just me personally.
Fresh too, like.
Yeah, and I think that particularly the one that will be important is the capital expenditures kind of decision-making process on February 7th. So I think that one could go, you know, to noon time if we started at 9 easily. So I think in particular, kind of making sure that we can make the schedule that Vika has laid out. And I do think that the meeting, so the Wednesday, January 7th meeting, I think what I would do is maybe have the first January 7th being a regular select board meeting and having the following week's meeting be, I mean, I guess we already committed to that with the finance committee, so we gotta stick with that date. But what I'm saying is I don't think we wanna do the finance committee budget presentation with a regular meeting. I think it might be a lot.
So you're suggesting just move the regular meetings to the following week then?
Yeah, I think so. And we have a meeting Wednesday, the 3rd, and then we would have another one Wednesday, like the 17th.
Wednesday, December 3rd, and then the 17th, correct?
Right.
And then you have, the following week is Christmas Eve, and then the following week is New Year's Eve, and then the following week is the 7th, and the.
Well, the other option is we could, so that's why I'm asking, because that's a pretty long stretch to go without a regular meeting. I'm wondering if we could ask the finance committee to do the
On the
following
14th.
Wednesday.
We're
gonna
we
meet
have a
Friday.
meeting this Friday, so I can ask them on Friday if, it
And
could
I
be
think they would-
possible for the 14th.
They might like a little more time, but I think what would be good is if the first meeting in January, because we won't have met for several weeks, we should deal with regular business. Then the following meeting, we could dedicate to just the finance committee budget presentation, and it might not be that long, but if it isn't, great, we go home early. But that would be, so basically having a regular meeting Wednesday the 7th, and then having, Wednesday the 14th, Valentine's Day, be the finance committee presentation.
I love it.
Yeah, we're looking at January 7th, and then January 14th,
For
and
the
then there'll be
finance.
a regular scheduled meeting on January 21st.
Yep.
So,
And I just wanna make sure, now that I'm in year 2, I appreciate having the schedule, but I wanna add, if we're going to more than 2 weeks between select board meetings, I really, appreciate hearing the reports from Vika and being able to stay on top of that. Can we include that?
I don't think we're talking about going in general 2 weeks in between, and what we're talking about is that in the interim between the regular meetings, potentially having a budget meeting,
Okay.
so that we're meeting every Wednesday.
It's good for me. I like
Okay,
the
does
Saturday-
anybody
I
have,
like the Saturday
Richard, do you
mornings
have
too, but I
challenges with that?
understand your schedule.
Nothing is in my way. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm good with all of this.
And is anybody traveling that they know of, you know?
We had potentially been considering traveling in March, but I would just
okay.
try to set it up where.
And
Could
we.
probably miss a regular board meeting and just make sure not to miss the budget meetings.
Right, and I think that's true. If you have to miss a meeting, it's probably better to miss a regular meeting than a budget meeting, but last year it got a little confusing because we changed the calendar so many times. It really, I couldn't keep track, so I'm really just trying to get some clarity. So people like in January, In January, people could meet every Wednesday.
I found one, I have a trip planned already on Wednesday, January 28th.
January 28th, okay.
Well, January. Okay.
So we can work around that. I think we would want you to see the first draft of the budget, so maybe we flip that and we do the regular meeting. You know, January 7th and 28th, and then the two interim ones being the budget or something like that. You're not here on the 28th,
That's correct.
and I,
The 24th to the 31st.
So the other thing is, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Wednesday.
true.
True.
Yeah, in fact, we did do that quite a bit. I think I think what we can do is go back to the drawing board on this a little bit. So basically what I'm hearing from you, Richard, is you have the 24th through the 31st, you're not available. And I think it's most important that we don't do like the first draft of the budget when you're not here.
Right.
So we'll work around that. And then, does anybody else say through, I know it can be a little hard to nail down your calendar in March, but I think, why don't we come back with but people are okay with the Saturdays, people are okay with it in the beginning, at least meeting every, once a week, either Wednesday or Thursday, maybe.
Yeah, and we have a, scheduled the March thing, so we'll just try to schedule it.
Yep.
So it works.
Yep. And then, we do have a meeting with the school, which, I don't know. What do you think about those meetings? We have two actually, right?
First and second ones.
I like it because that's such a big expense and it gives us plenty of time to process the information and to go over it and to ask questions. So as a newbie, I have to say I appreciated getting up to speed on what they were doing.
So I think one of the things though that we maybe need to find a way to communicate with this to the school is the whole capital budget planning process, which is gonna drive, particularly in this year, I think it's gonna drive a lot of the budget. So if they're not, if they're not available to come to, say, the capital expenditure review, but maybe we can at least let the superintendent know. And maybe he can attend, even though it's not the school capital, it is gonna be important that he understands, or the school committee understands the other constraints. Otherwise, I think one of us, or the finance committee could go to the school committee and kind of bring them up to speed.
I like the idea of having.
Because I think it's like, we're kind of following this parallel path. We don't tell them how to do their budget, but I think we need to inform them about kind of what big projects we have that are gonna influence capital in case, and I'm not aware of anything that they have coming up, but it would be important to know.
Aaron was involved in the finance committee at the beginning. He reads up on the information now, but he doesn't participate as actively in the meetings. But I can communicate with them to see if in the discussions over the next several weeks that the finance committee is gonna have in preparation for this, if maybe he can get himself to be a little bit more involved in the process, so he has a better understanding as the superintendent what the finance committee is doing and recommending relative to the capital expenditure, so maybe that could help guide the conversation a little bit.
And maybe it's even attending the finance committee budget presentation, which would, right now, we're talking maybe the 14th, or watching the video. He doesn't have to hang around and attend, but kind of getting up to speed. And it might be good to, the finance committee is not directly interacting with the school committee. They sort of see their role as municipal only, so just so we know. And right now, the school, I don't think we have any big ticket items coming out of there, but we don't know, so. So anyway, I think sort of switching around January, meeting once a week in January and potentially February, and then I wonder if we could have these meetings on the calendar, but if we don't need them,
Right.
we could, cancel them.
Yeah.
I think that's the better way to go than to try to schedule them later on. And then the nonprofit contributions, that's right now we have that set up for Saturday. We have asked the finance committee to kind of give us some context for how other towns do that. But I don't know that we're gonna be deviating too much at this stage of the game, but, it's a weird setup when they're coming and asking for money. It just doesn't feel right to me.
I like that.
You like it?
But it's a big chunk of money. Having an opportunity to present what their request is and giving an opportunity to ask questions about it. I think we could streamline it and.
Well, and
the document will help.
I do think they should do that in the paperwork that they submit.
Yes, but I like having it be in this format
Mhm.
because it makes everybody stand up and pay attention to what's
So-
being asked.
So this is a proposal that sort of came from Vika and myself that, that we not have them make presentations. It's up to the board if you'd rather have
That's
them
great.
come in person.
I think it's great that they don't make those presentations.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they could
It's-
do it in written form.
And have a standard form, that was, to me, the hardest part, it's like figuring out what is it they're asking for.
Right.
Amongst their,
The standard form is, standardizing that form is really helpful. But can I make another stab at it before we give it to people? Okay, maybe we could just streamline the presentation, but again, I'm good to work with everybody about it, but we can streamline it. But I wouldn't take it out altogether.
So
That's my,
what is the benefit to you of the presentation?
the value of these nonprofits to our community is way more than the amount of money that was spent in the budget on them. When I look at how, is it 180 that we allocate? When I look at the value of what this community gets for that 180,000 from our town, I think it's much greater. And so in part, I think it's an acknowledgement of the value of those, but also asking those nonprofits to justify to the select board what they're asking for and getting, just keeping the lines of communication open between what these nonprofits are providing for the town and what is being allocated for the town and what the town is looking for. So I think skipping it, if we lightened up for a year, that's okay, but I think as a regular practice, having nonprofits come before the select board to talk about what they're asking for, to justify it, and I really like the idea of the single application, putting everybody on the same page is important. So I think it could be done in less time, but I think if that was not done for a period of time, it could lose some connection between the town and the nonprofits.
I see what you're saying. I guess tying it to their, the board's financial allocation to me, I think that might be better done in a separate form where they make a report to the select board on kind of, so we do ask our committees to do an annual report.
Right.
And so it could be similar for the nonprofits, like what, in other words, it's a more positive experience, I think, to come in and say, here's all the things we're doing, this is how we're allocating our funds, this is how we're spending the money that the town is giving us, and these are the programs we're offering. It feels like a defensive posture in the budget process to me, and I just don't like that. I feel like they're trying, and it has been very, I wouldn't say contentious, but
A little confrontational.
yeah, because they're kind of back on their heels asking for money. And I think I think also we might at some point have to make some hard decisions about how much we allocate when we look at the entirety of all our obligations. And so, I think that, and we can always ask them to come in specifically if we have a question. Further in
Come
the
to that
process.
Saturday meeting and be in attendance.
Right.
I think that's
Right.
I think the purpose of not having a presentation is to really cut back on time. And if you streamline the process of them filling out the information and presenting that information similarly across all the different nonprofits,
they can come, they can be here while you're discussing it, and if you have questions, you're welcome to ask those questions and vice versa. It's just putting them on the spot and having them stand there and justify what they're asking. To me, has felt a little uncomfortable for them, just the whole process. And I think kind of to put a slightly different twist on it is. You look at the number for that total pool of 170, 180. You're not asking each individual department to come and do a presentation. You're kind of trusting that behind the scenes work is gonna be done and you're hearing that information. And so I think while nonprofits aren't exactly part of the town, it's you're shifting into a similar expectation of them doing the work up front and presenting it based on the information that the select board is asking to receive. And then seeing if it streamlines, but I don't think, I'm not suggesting that they don't show up at all. They're welcome to come and sit, and if you have questions, then ask the questions.
But to be fair, the town departments are being supervised regularly, all the time by the town. And that's not happening with the nonprofits, and I found it very helpful as a select person. Hearing some of these pieces of information about what they're providing. So I'm glad to take a look at how we can shorten it up if the consensus is different. As usual, I would go along with it, but I like the idea of having it standardized, having it streamlined, but.
If you're willing, I would like to try it. It's more to change the tone. I just feel like it adds this.
I think we could change the tone.
Well, I haven't felt that way, and I guess having done this for a while, I'd like to just try it without them having to defend their request. And just, we will have the request in writing, and if we have questions, we can ask them, but I think maybe having them at another point in time, similar to what the committees do, report on their activities in a sort of positive light might be, to me, kind of a better way to build a rapport.
Or maybe we put it,
Yeah.
every other board meeting or whatever, however we want to.
Yeah, we could do
There's the
one.
nonprofit of the week, right?
Yeah.
They come and
Right.
do their presentation, but I'm also remembering that like last summer at the big event at the rec center on the field, right?
Yeah.
Or was it on the field, or
Are you
it was
talking
inside, it was
about
inside.
Recompense.
It was inside.
Was it
They had
right?
all the yeah, they had
Yeah,
all the.
those are recompense
Yeah.
meetings.
Yeah,
That's
With the-
cool.
and that's what you're saying is a value, is hearing what they're doing, and I thought that was a value too. But maybe we could just build that in as that they're
Right.
sort of the nonprofit visitor of the week.
Right, I think that's a better way to do it, and I do think that is very valuable. What I don't like is then, well, we really need another $10,000 because we want to do this, and
At least
you know, make the request in writing in a form that the whole community can see. And, you know, and we will have to make the decisions, and if we need more information, we'll have to go to them for it, but it kind of, makes it less personal, the financial decision, which is really a community-wide board decision kind of thing versus what they're doing. And I think we can all agree the rec center has made huge strides since the pandemic in terms of how they're operating. So I don't think anybody would argue with that, so. Anyway,
Thank you.
the other thing I think we should do though is Vika can put the sheet that we asked the nonprofits to fill out. It would be good to have, board members review that before we send that out in case there's anything specific you want to add or tweak. Because especially if we're, changing the process slightly. So I think I would ask that people look at that, we can share it. We don't need to take it up at a meeting, but if you have comments or additions, you can just put it on there. And is everybody clear on how to get to the SharePoint site?
Not really.
Not well,
We don't need-
you have a link in a fairly recent email that's at the
Yes.
bottom. That's the first time I've seen that, and so
Yeah.
now I know how to get there.
Come into the office
All
at
the
the time, I'll
Can we do it?
physically show it to you.
It's-
Is there some way other than that link that you gave us? I'm just.
Yeah.
I can, if you connect with me individually, I could walk you through.
And what I would recommend is you bring, if you have a laptop, you bring your laptop so you know how to do it. I do it differently there's multiple ways to get in there.
Yeah.
So,
Connect with me individually and we can walk through it.
and, yeah,
I would suggest that.
Because-
Just do it on the phone or virtually, so.
Yeah.
I would set up a time and come into the office and then that way we could just do it in person.
it won't take long.
Yeah,
But it basically it's not gonna be, it can't be very complicated, right? So
It's not.
So
it's more complicated trying to explain it to you without you physically sitting there
okay,
and doing it. It would, yeah,
and regardless whether we're Apple, Mac, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it
Doesn't matter,
matters.
none of that matters, okay.
yeah. Just reach out to me and we can connect and figure it out.
Hey, listen, I like this, I really appreciate getting this in November. And, this is great,
And so we're gonna tweak,
I'm
we're
good to
gonna
go.
tweak it a little bit. I suggest we leave I think one thing that might be helpful is, adding our regular meetings so that we're kind of clear on what our
Yeah,
commitments
Maybe
are.
bold the ones
Right.
and not bold the others.
Then we'll look at it, and I think we may not need them all. My goal is to cut some of them out, but I'd rather have them on there and not do them. What we did last year was switch around, and that was complicated.
That was hard. If we can stick to this, that's fine.
And I will say, one of the goals here is, to get these things done in time, that it's not a jam to come up with the budget warrant. The town meeting warrant, which, includes the budget. Prior to the finance committee meeting with us, we should know the balance in the undesignated fund, which will be kind of important for future budget planning.
Good to take.
So. Okay. And I think, one thing, Vika made a request at the last meeting that we, provide some funding for Mark at the special town meeting and also some engineering services in the general nature. And I think the $1 million windfall makes me feel very comfortable, particularly with Mark, because we're gonna need his help as we continue. I mean, I think we're gonna have to keep him on board for a while.
Reporting for all these grants is gonna be really time consuming.
And so I think, but also the fact that we have this chunk of change, it is, we should think of some of that to help support.
What was the
The
amount I
process.
thought we would be asking? for?
We asked for 20, and that gets us through the end of the fiscal year, right, for Mark?
Yeah, that would get us through most of the work that,
Right, that's, we approved that already.
Well, no,
five, you just approved five.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the rest of it is what we're asking for.
at the special town meeting, which, when is that, Vika?
That's the next.
Oh,
agenda
yeah,
item.
okay, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so is everybody clear on that for now? We'll come up with a budget schedule that shows all the meetings and make.
We'll add this dates on the town calendar and then what we'll probably do is put it all in like a monthly calendar and send that to you so you could see in
Yeah.
a monthly calendar, January, February, March. All of the meeting dates. And then if we need to revisit, we can revisit. There is no obligation to formally adopt any, the meeting dates. So, if we have these, we can tweak them as we go. But this way we can give you, a better visual on the calendar.
Good. So, the next item is 2596 to discuss and set a date for a special town meeting in January 2026. And then Vika had a suggested date for that, which is the Saturday.
Saturday, January 24th. I was hoping to suggest something a little bit earlier in the month. But realistically, if it's the first week of January, that only gives us a couple of board meetings where we would need to have a finalized warrant, and I think just the timing makes it a little tight. So this is the earliest possible date recommended, which would then put us to possibly having a draft by December 17th and then having you adopt the final thing by January 7th. That's in line with regularly scheduled meetings.
Yep.
If this date doesn't work, then we have to work our way back to a different date. And if draft and finalize and it doesn't work within regularly scheduled meetings, then it would have to be a special meeting or piggyback on a budget meeting or something, so. I guess the first question is, does this date work? 'Cause Richard looks like it's a conflict.
The
With
same
that,
day, that's the same conflict I have.
So you're gone the 24th to the 31st.
It's a trip I won in the raft.
And I guess we do try to have them on Saturdays rather than weekdays, so anybody can attend.
Well, does he need to be here for a warrant?
No, but this is a special town meeting, and it's not essential that Richard's here, it's his. You can tell us how comfortable you are with, not being here, I mean, it's.
You
not-
wouldn't be making any decisions at
Right,
town meeting.
right.
Your decision would be made ahead of time when you're finalizing and approving and voting on the warrant. At town meeting, there's really no obligation or requirement that all select board are present. So,
Because-
not to discourage the date changing, I just wanna make sure that
That's
you
right.
understand their role at town meeting.
And it's not available on Zoom. Town meeting.
No,
So we'll probably televise it, but
you
not,
can't vote by.
we're not, no one's gonna vote, yeah.
It's your call.
Okay, no, I'm fine.
Okay, so you're all
I
right.
think otherwise it sounds like a big day.
It sounds like it's sort of a housekeeping thing too, that if we don't do it then, I mean,
It's not.
it's pretty much the most practical date
Yeah.
based on Vika's.
Based for the earliest possible time frame for us to have the time, yes.
And one of the-
Otherwise, the later we push it, the more concerned I become really running out of money with Mark and then having to come to you for more, which I would like to avoid.
Right. And I don't know if there's anything else that will be, we have a number of land use related things. It's questionable whether we would bring any of those forward for this special town meeting. There's sort of some housekeeping things, and then there's also, the floodplain map thing, the resource protection map. So I don't know, we should know by the next meeting whether we would bring anything else forward, but.
And is that anything we should be informed about now?
Well, I think we're actually gonna talk about one of them, going forward, but I mean, typically. We haven't made much progress the past, and I'm not blaming the planning board, but we just haven't made much progress in improving and adopting some of the changes. That, the planning board had a very ambitious agenda this time last year to do short-term rentals, to do. Shoreline zoning changes, they had a number of ordinance updates. And I think it's hard at regular town meetings, just so much other material. So we can talk to them and see if there's anything they want to bring forward. I mean, they certainly have developed them, they've already had a public hearing, they might want to have another public hearing. And then the shoreline. So that we adopted the new FEMA maps, that changes our resource protection boundaries. And we need to adopt the new maps. And we're a year plus behind on that, and so that is impacting kind of the permitting process in the community, so I do think there's some urgency there. Kind of been looking to the code enforcement officer and the planning board to give us some guidance on that. So,
Thank you.
then I guess, so so do you need anything other than just an agreement consensus that the 24th is okay? You don't need a motion, do you? Do we need a motion? We can.
You can if you want to, it's not required, the only requirement is
Is the
making
warrant.
sure that the town warrant
Yeah.
is voted on and signed, and we have it advertised a minimum of 7 days before meeting.
Yeah, I think we're good.
So by consensus.
Yeah. Then 2597 to review the Ashwaubenon Island Library's recommendation to modify the zoning setback and identify the appropriate next steps. So you might recall that the library came to the meeting, and under, public discussion, public comments, they brought up they provided the recommendation that we look at the required setback of whatever it is, 55 feet, and consider reducing it. It was a major snag for the library in their project approval, and they mentioned that, like Long Island has some smaller distances. And so I was getting ready to sort of send that recommendation on to the code enforcement officer and the planning board, but then I realized it's really up to the select board to decide, is this something we want to recommend to, and I think the process would be the select board would recommend to the code enforcement officer that he works with the planning board to come up with a recommended
Yeah,
change.
to review.
Right,
To
to review our current ordinance and make a a recommendation on what distance would be appropriate.
I think that's the way to go.
That
Right.
sounds better, so that it comes from the code enforcement officer's knowledge and background of what's appropriate.
And he works with the planning board
Yeah.
together, and then they come back with a proposal, to reduce it from 55 to 40 or whatever they decide.
Yeah.
And he,
I have no idea all the different possibilities where that zoning rule
right, so
setback
it's,
applies
Right.
and would be significant. I mean, this is one instance.
right.
Right, but could be a lot of different things, septic and I don't.
Are we talking about zoning just for businesses?
We're talking about the setback from the road, I believe, for, and that is in the business zone.
In the
here.
business zone, right?
And so I think we can make that, but it's really, the reason I'm putting this on the agenda is it wasn't appropriate for me to say, go check into this. I felt like the board needed to, it was a kind of an informal suggestion. So now we can decide formally whether it's something we would like the code enforcement officer and the planning board to consider.
I guess my other question would be, I often hear him say, we should be looking at this zoning, we should look at improving it or changing it. So now we're talking about it specifically here for the setbacks for a business in a business zone. My question would be, what other things should we be looking at?
There's probably a number.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not sure the planning board has the bandwidth to consider all of those at the moment, and it would really probably come out of the new comp plan. A good portion of it. So I was really just trying to proactively respond to what I thought was a helpful suggestion.
Would we be calling this a low hanging fruit?
Potentially, and I think it's because someone experienced a problem, they came to us and said, this might help.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're gonna come back with a recommendation to change it. They might come back and say, let's hold off until we do the whole.
That would be helpful to hear, and I think it sends a good message about listening to what people are requesting, responding, involving people, and see what we come up with.
So what I'll do is just send an email, if the board is, I don't think, again, we don't need a motion, I just think I needed to make sure the board was on board with that. And I think either they come back with a recommendation to change it, or they might come back and say, we keep it the way it is, we have so much else we have to change, I don't know.
And this was a very specific one, so.
It was.
Zoning setback for business in the business zone from the street.
Right,
And it's inappropriate
And-
because it's so large and it came into the town of Sheboygan Island when we became a town inherited from the town of Cumberland.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. so, okay, well, I think we're good with that.
Thank you.
So 2598 to review, and we've got adopt guidelines for municipal boards and committees. So in your packet was a draft of a committee guidebook. And I put this together from,
Nice work.
Vika and I discussed it, but I kind of put it together from multiple sources, which is always a little dangerous. I tried to keep it as short as I could, but,
I didn't see any other towns listed in there, so.
well, no, I did get rid of the other
Yeah,
towns.
no, I'm just saying.
But it's interesting to see what other towns do, and that these things happen either because they're having problems or because, they've got to, who knows why, but, and it's not always the towns you would expect, like some little podunk towns have great guidance and other ones, big towns have nothing, so. Basically, this is to address, Vika, maybe you want to give it a little introduction as to why we feel we should do this.
So the town does have a committee guidelines policy, which I've learned. It has a lot of the same information, but it doesn't provide the same level of detail that this document does. Some of the issues that we experience in a town level, is dealing with all of the variety of different boards and having an expectation, but the follow through is inconsistent across the boards. So every municipal board, whether they're appointed, elected, ad hoc, quasi, whatever they are. The requirement from a state statutory level is a board cannot hold a meeting unless it has been advertised of the time, place, location, a minimum of 3 days before the meeting is to take place. Just in the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 different boards that have held meetings. One, it held without advertising it properly. I found out the meeting took place after it had taken place. One held a meeting with 2 board members. I have not received minutes from that meeting, so I don't know whether they're gonna assume that it was a meeting that they actually conducted, but I was told that they went through the entire agenda as they would have. And things were discussed, and so we are running into this ongoing hiccup with the boards. There is the understanding that all of the boards are volunteers, so there is the recognition of that. But when you join a board, there is still the expectation that you follow at a minimum the statutory requirements to conduct a meeting. And so when these boards don't do that, the push that we get from the community of not being transparent, not being forthcoming, withholding information, that just further fuels the fire for people. And so adopting a form of a guideline with a lot more detail in it would make the boards accountable so they know how to apply, when to apply to the board, what the expectations are of reporting to the board. Not all boards have a president, a chair, not all boards have secretaries. Most of the boards don't give us any minutes after the fact, so we just don't have a good record keeping for not controlling how these boards operate, but making them be accountable for the expectation on a statutory level of how they should operate. So in the case that something happens and we're in a legal dispute or somebody is questioning the validity of a motion, we have information to fall back on, and so something like this would even though we do have one, this having something fresh, something new. We've talked about it in the office. What we would do is we would reach out to all the boards. We would let them know that this is something that is new, that adopted, and these are the expectations. And then we would try to follow through on our end. So when we would get notified of a meeting to be posted, we would try to reach out to them after that meeting to try to retrieve the information that we need so then we can properly post it. And so as we are expected on a town level as employees to be accountable with the behavior and with kind of the steps that we take and making sure we're doing things right, this is putting a little bit more of expectation and accountability on all of the boards to make sure that across the board, regardless of what those boards are or what their operating purposes is, that they're all providing us the same information in terms of advertising, posting, and delivering the documents that are necessary to be delivered for record keeping and for full transparency of operation needs.
So and all board members will sign this.
Yeah, well, they have to sign the ethics and code of conduct policy, which we did get everybody to sign.
The ethics and code of conduct is something that was adopted by the board last summer. And so we did ask all of the board members to sign it. The town clerk kept track of who brought that information in. And so this is really kind of taking another step and saying that if you're gonna be on the board, these are the expectations of the operations of the board, and making sure that they're all aware and familiar and they follow through, so then we can provide really the general public, the public information about what's going on with these boards, and the information that is coming out of them.
And I would say, so we put in the bit about applications and appointments because we found out last year that we weren't, people were kind of rolling over onto reappointments without any formal process. And so we formalized that. So basically, when your term is up, it's up and you've got to reapply for a reappointment. And so that it's clear that people don't just continue, forever. It's up to the board then to decide whether that person gets reappointed. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, and then also if you're gonna resign, then you really do need to notify the town. In other words, sometimes people resign but don't really, notify the town staff. So it's really just that has to be a formal and some people have a fit in a meeting and say, that's it, I quit, and then they come back. And so we've all, so it's really just a formal resignation requires notification of I think it's the town clerk. Then the meeting procedures are really, I tried not to be too, specific, not to be too overwhelming. It's really just basically making sure you have a quorum and making sure you run a meeting, kind of efficiently. I do think that we need to have a higher level of accountability for the adjudicatory committees. So those are the quasi judicial committees that make decisions on behalf of the town. So they are empowered, by state statute to be decision makers. And so that would be the planning board and the board of appeals, and even potentially, I'm not sure about coastal waters. And so one of the changes here that's being proposed is, besides the fact that the meetings have to be publicly noticed, that they be conducted via, and I don't know if this is the right language, but via, stream and then recorded. Because the records of those meetings, particularly you can think of planning board meetings, those records are important and, people might need to come back to them. And so that's sort of a higher, and I think it might also improve people's behavior a little bit. When they know it's there for perpetuity. And then the advisory and ad hoc committees, we didn't want to require quite as much on them. But then, and this could be sort of a separate goal, but then all committees can follow the town's remote meeting policy, which we'll go into after that. And then on the communication thing, I just thought it was important to specify, because we have boards operating different ways, that, the town administrator is copied on any emails to, say, like a state agency or to a contractor that's working for the town, so that we don't have people going directly to those parties without the town administrator knowing. They don't have to do anything, they don't have to respond, it's just a courtesy. And I try to do that, and I would hope other board members would. If you're communicating with somebody that we're paying, or someone that has a relationship with the town that's important, such as the state agency, you should copy the town administrator. And we definitely have people not doing that. And then we don't know what's going on, and we find out kind of what party that, so-and-so from the town has contacted me, and, Beacon needs to be in the loop about that. So, and then in general, with the exception of the planning board and the board of appeals, all committees are advisory and they can't make decisions on behalf of the town. And that's just important to point out, And then responsibilities of the chairperson, secretary, and committee members, including that they show up and do something, I tried to say it as politely as possible. And then the select board liaison does have a role, and, just trying to spell that out as clearly as possible. So that's kind of where we're at on this. And it's, Vika, I think you were hoping to adopt it tonight. Is that what you were saying? Or do you want?
So I did compare it to the one that we had. It is very similar. Like I said, what it does is it just provides a little bit more detail in terms of explanation. And so, based on the information that's in here, I'm very comfortable with it being adopted. And I even had the clerk and the deputy clerk look at it. There's a couple little, areas where periods needed according to Krista looking at it, but other than that, I'm very comfortable with it being adopted.
I do have I think this is great. I do have one question about appointment. Number 2, reasonable attendance at committee meetings is expected. Continued absence will result in replacement. So it's difficult with a word like reasonable. Should we be more specific or just leave the word reasonable?
I think. I think reasonable is good, because somebody might get sick or have a, family event that causes, I think there should be opportunities for exceptions. I think in particular. I don't know, I prefer not being like, I think maybe the planning board ordinance says, if you miss 3 meetings in a row, you're out.
Oh, yeah.
And we've never done that, even though people have missed 3 meetings in a row. So I'm kind of the mindset that we don't put stuff in there that we're not gonna do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that makes sense.
Do you feel comfortable with reasonable?
I do, I think one of the, things is we do have a couple of individuals and a couple of committees that they've been on the committee for years, but that they haven't attended meetings. In that case, I don't think they should still be considered a board member, and so
So would
that's
they
not
receive
reasonable.
notice from their committee chair or from you? If they're not attending, then it's.
That's the committee chair is the person who's keeping track of
Would
who's
take care of it,
attending and
okay.
who's not attending, and it says in here, if someone is not performing, or not attending, it's the committee chair's responsibility to bring that to the
Yeah.
town administrator.
I'm really shifted in the direction of. You can have a committee, but it needs to be functional and operational. If it's not, it's just as good as not having a full committee, so if we have volunteers and we acknowledge that these are all people that are putting their time and commitment into volunteering. And that's great, but if they're not going to, or if they're gonna do it in a way that's gonna make the process a lot more difficult, then you're just as better off not having a committee as you do with individuals who are not functioning according to the requirements and the process that's set in place to make sure that they do it the right way.
Okay.
David?
I hate to make a suggestion, but continued absence will result in replacement. Continued unnoticed or not unnoticed,
Unexcused,
unexcused absence.
that's fine.
I think that would help clarify that point.
But do people agree with that? I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So do you need a motion for us to adopt this?
So, where's the unexcused absence? I just wanna make sure.
Number 2 under appointment.
Appointment, okay, thank you, continue, there it is, thank you. Unexcused. If you are comfortable making a motion, what I would recommend is make a motion to adopt this document as discussed, replacing the current policy that exists. Because like I said, the information is all similar, it's just in more detailed, and so it would be nice to adopt it in replacement to what had already existed.
Should I do it?
Go for it.
To 25-098 to adopt the town committee guidelines for the town of Sheboygan Island, replacing the former document,
The current policy.
the current policy. Thank you, Preston.
For municipal boards and committees.
For municipal boards and committees.
Thank you, David.
Amen. I mean,
And is there a second?
Second.
Get several seconds, so, and then any more discussion about the guidelines? This is still essentially a policy, same idea, right?
yeah, good.
Who wants to,
Let's say
Richard did the second, all
Thank you.
right, and then all in favor? Okay, great,
Thank you.
Nice.
so. Next on the agenda is
It's remote participation.
Yeah, so it's the remote participation policy, and Vika put that in the packet, and the committee guidelines refer to that, and this has been coming up with some regularity. So,
There's a memo, there's a fact sheet, and the actual current policy with all of the red lines that have been suggested for replacement.
so I think Vika prepared this and edited our existing policy, and I think the goal here is to make it universal, right?
So what this does is it really, before the select board, it was a select board participation, remote participation policy, and that really excluded any other board. And that really made it tricky and difficult. And so what this does is this makes it applicable to all municipal boards. But it makes it required for select board, planning board, and board of adjustment appeals. The reason that board of adjustment and appeals and planning board are being included is really to the specific reasons that were mentioned earlier, because they are two boards that have powers and abilities to do things that no other board does, and having that record keeping in addition to just the minutes. It's really important, and I think would be helpful for the municipality to show that you're taking a step forward into the remote world. For the rest of the boards, it would be optional, so they would have to discuss it amongst themselves as a board and make a motion and adopt it, and then record that with the town clerk, so then we know which boards have it adopted or not. What this policy does not do is make it a requirement or the option to have all the other boards recorded or remote participation. I know that that is a strong want and interest in the community, but I still stand very firmly that until we have a better system and the human capacity to provide that service and ability that currently as things exist, we don't have the capacity to provide that. With the planning board and board of adjustment appeals, I do attend the hearings and now am attending most planning board meetings. So it wouldn't be as difficult to make that possible if it became a requirement, because I am there. But to rolling that into the rest of the boards, I can't say that we have the capacity to be able to provide that.
So if folks have any questions about this, I think if you read the policy, frequently asked questions, I think we're really trying not to eliminate or, transition to fully remote meetings. We still are trying to have in-person meetings, but we're allowing for some board members or other individuals to participate remotely. It has come up with the planning board and the code enforcement officer because, he lives some distance away and he is quite happy to attend the planning board meetings and has stuck around to do that, but I think he would probably attend a lot more of the meetings if he could do it remotely, and it was prohibited because they didn't have a remote participation policy.
Yeah, so in here, there is a section that will say that remote participation is permissible for municipal employees and hired professionals such as town attorney and engineers. This approach reduces travel to the island and simplifies meeting arrangements with the necessary board. So if the select board is meeting and there is an executive session and it is with legal attorney about current legal matters, that allows you more or less to participate remotely, or if there's a presentation or whatever, it makes it so you're able to do that within the current policy instead of doing something outside of it.
Moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Trying to.
So, with this, it's a policy, again, we would wanna actually adopt it and, but if people need more time to digest it, then we can wait till the next meeting, so it's really, it's up to you. I think Vika's done quite a bit of work on this and as, you know, I think particularly the frequently asked questions section is very helpful. So it's up to folks, but if you want more time to read it, we're really changing a policy that's already in existence, so it's not like we're starting from scratch. So what's the board's pleasure on that?
Just assume adopted.
Okay, so to do that, then we just need a motion.
Yes.
Gotta move it, right?
Yeah.
So I move that, we, adopt the, 25-099 select board remote participation policy. That's written.
Yep,
So,
great. David second. Assuming no more discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. We need to have some more controversial issues. I'm sure they're coming. Wait till we get to the budget. All right, so we're through the meat of the budget here, I mean, the meeting. So next in line is communications, and I think we'll start with Vika just because sometimes she gets the most of them.
Other business?
Oh, sorry, missed it. Other business. Anybody have anything under other business? Richard, I guess you could bring it up under communications, yeah. Anybody have anything else under other business? Okay. Vika?
So just a couple of communications. One is I did receive an email from Mike Morse. Mike Morse is the gentleman that is assisting two residents, Waldo Point right-of-way access, the two abutting properties. They're just curious to know where the town stands, and so I would recommend that maybe the select board take it out at the next select board meeting and decide whether we wanna move forward in some fashion, working with them, or just say no and let them figure it out on their own. I think it would be nice to get back to them.
what's the issue?
So they basically offered to split the cost of some stabilization of the town right of way near Waldo Point, and I agree. I think we need to put it on the agenda with, and we did briefly, or she did a very cursory review. We had somebody from GEI look at it. Her comment was she didn't think we had enough information to make a decision. So I will see her tomorrow and just sort of ask because you know, what kind of information we might need. Because I think that is also a reality, is that we may need to get some outside expertise on some of these projects because, you know, it's out of my wheelhouse understanding what's there. And people, you know, so anyway, I do think we owe Mike a response. Let's put it on the agenda. I agree, let's put it on the agenda for next meeting, but I will take it on to kind of come up with some background information so we can try to make a decision.
And I'll make sure we have a memo with all the information that had been shared previously, so you have a chance to be able to have a decision that you can make.
Yep.
I have a note here written, but I'm not sure what I was talking about. So I don't know about that. One thing is, you will all likely have received an email from me today. The town did some behind the scenes cybersecurity updates, so it's just more enhanced.
So is that primarily kind of office stuff, like at the office? Cause I didn't know, like, how does that affect us or where?
So it's gonna affect anybody that has a town of Shebig Island email address. So what it does is the emails, I mean, it's within the office, yes, but then the emails themselves. Anything fishy, anything that is gonna be a spam, things like that. So one thing for you to keep in mind is they are going to send out some random testing phishing emails, and if you click on them, they're gonna know you clicked on it, and then you're gonna get notified
I got-
and say you have to go through a little training.
I got
To
one.
better understand who did.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you did get it and you know that it's a phishing email, just delete it, don't open it, but if you do open it, then Ion and the town is gonna get notified that you opened an email you should
Well,
know.
I
So
already
I've been, in the past, I've had emails that looked like they were from a former board member asking for me to pick up gift cards.
Yes,
Where
yeah.
that is.
So, and those are the
Not
kind of
that.
things, with the more enhanced cyber security, it's something that, was budgeted. Through the budget process last year, a couple $1,000s was allocated to just beef up the security. So that's just, you received an email from me today with some information, so just.
So we're gonna receive those through our town.
regular
email.
county.
Correct, yeah.
All right,
They
great.
can find
Got
all-
two places I gotta watch for.
Earhart, they can find all your other emails, addresses and send
And,
them
and,
to.
and
just-
speaking of email, just remember, we've only had town emails for what, 2 years or something?
Over.
Yeah,
It's been,
the
to me,
select board having, anybody outside of a town employee, select board having an email address is new. We did recently just set up, planning board and board of adjustment appeals. We set up an email, so I'll be connecting with those boards in the next week or so and just letting them know, so then the chair of that board will have a town of Shebig Island, and it's, I mean, freedom of access with you using the reason is with the legal issue that we've been in over the last couple of years, freedom of access. If you have your personal email, everything could be asked for, and so this really makes it so the people who are giving their time to the town are more or less better protected, and you're going through the proper channels, so.
and I think it does, differentiate it from your private email, which I think helps. I mean, I just like, if town businesses, because I actually work with some of the same people professionally as I do through the town. And it's nice they can figure out, oh, she's calling me about, or she's contacting me about Shabby, not about, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, I think it's good. I think if they weren't updating the cybersecurity, we'd be worried. So,
yeah, so it's been a long time coming, it's something we budgeted for, so.
a couple of towns have had, ransomware attacks, so let's not be one of those. Anything else on communications?
Think so, I went through them today.
Well,
Thank you
I
for the
think
most part.
I can add, because I got copied on it, we did have a communication from Bruce Anderson, sort of about South Shore Drive, and he was expressing some frustration with our slow pace. But also mentioned, which was a little bit of surprise to me, that they have pursued sort of setting up, a fiscal agent, to make contributions to the South Shore Drive project, which we have not necessarily really discussed that process. And that, it wasn't, so basically that was it, and why don't we get moving on it? And I think, I will say that we do have to, have some decisions to make in that project. I will say, I want to keep my eye also on the Stone Pier, because that kind of took a back seat. And we have some money and we need to get moving. And so I think there's a lot to balance here. And I think we should share the email with the board rather than me kind of go through it, but, that is on the, is in the queue to kind of deal with.
Well,
So
Rika shared the back and forth she had with.
I'm not sure that particular email, I don't know if it got shared. I got copied on the response, but I don't know, you guys, oh, you did,
We saw the
okay,
whole thing.
Yeah,
yeah,
You mentioned that it has to go to a town meeting, and
right.
that was.
I'll double check, if you didn't see it, I'll make sure to forward.
But anyway, that's, I'm trying to think.
I don't know if I missed it, but I don't see it.
So other than that, I don't think,
I have to.
yeah, Earhart
I have
has,
two, you have
has a
one?
couple.
I have-
Yeah, go ahead,
Go ahead.
Richard, go ahead.
I'd just like to mention, I was approached by Cecil Amos and Melissa this few days ago, very concerned about encroachment upon their right of way by the construction. Bill Dougherty's property. I think they're just really concerned that they're trying to protect that right of way and that the town is aware of it and doesn't. It's at the end of the road, nobody sees it, but they wanna make sure that we're aware of it, and I feel like it's important that we protect these assets to the private citizens.
This is a town right away?
No, it's there.
Private,
They're
right
private.
away, being
Yes, they're private.
encroached upon by a neighbor.
Yeah, he's been
Well, that's,
approached many times.
or what jurisdiction does the town have on somebody's?
The code enforcement officer, I think, may,
Yeah.
because it's part of a construction.
Code enforcement officer did go and he did, double check and he was, I can't confirm whether he did or not, but I spoke to Cecil a number of times, he's been in the office.
Yeah.
Code enforcement officer went to the site and code enforcement officer was going to reach out to him. As far as the right of way, the town really doesn't have any grounds to tell. It's a private property dispute, but whether any construction is
Right.
being done properly or not, that's a code enforcement officer thing, and he did,
And,
go and check in on that, so.
and there were some deficiencies which he communicated to the contractor that
Yeah.
hopefully have been repaired. I would expect that he might have gone out there today. I don't know.
He was out there last week.
Yeah.
I just thought it prudent to mention it, he was really concerned, I think he would have come here today if.
Yeah.
He had known, but.
Yeah.
I'd speak for him.
Okay, I have two, one, Paul actually came over, he wants to sign off our project today, but we got a conversation and he just mentioned that at some point it'd be good to initiate a kind of a review of some of the fee structures for the different types, where he said some things don't really have fees that probably need them, and others have some fees that maybe are a bit exorbitant and don't really promote either and goodwill and or forthcomingness on the part of people who would maybe otherwise put in for a permit.
So he's talking about, land use related permit fees.
Part of it, but he also said, like, I guess it was like if you wanna come in. I mean, I don't know, like you wanna come in for consultation on a project you're thinking of working on. There's like a $250 fee to do that, now on the books, it may not ever get applied, it's certainly gonna apply to me when I talk to him, but. So anyway, he just requested that maybe we consider at some point doing a fee review
Right, and I think
with his input, he'd be happy to come and.
I think what he could do is provide us with some,
Yeah,
Yeah.
him and I talked about it, I suggested that he make changes and put in his recommendations in the fee schedule and provide that to me, and then we could bring it to the board.
Okay. So
There we
that was one, that was just today and a casual conversation, so.
Yeah.
The other one, and Carol was there, we're on the boat, so.
back at the boat report.
Back of the boat report with, like a full-time resident on the island who has a second property. This is the neighborhood of my house, and they kindly are allowing a summer resident to overwinter the car there. And they came onto the property and found that the car had two bullet holes in the car and a flat tire, which was probably another bullet hole. And given the location, I mean, so the first thing you think, well, it's a hunter, but if it were a hunter, they would have had to been shooting across North Road from the opposite side of the road. And there really is nothing, I mean, there's very little land between that and then you get to like the Hinchman's property. So I can't imagine somebody would have practically had them standing on the Hinchman property shooting at something within relatively short footage of the road and then shooting across the road hitting a car. Or it was sort of a vandal kind of thing. So
They report it,
yes, so I got a call from the actual owner of the car. And followed up with her and they did report it, so, but it was kind of an FYI to let you know that that's happening, and I'm actually gonna go walk over there. And just see if there's any, I mean, to me, they don't look like shotgun shot, they look like. Either slugs or rifle or pistol or something. And pretty good sized holes in the car, but I thought I'd go over and walk the woods. On the other side of the road, see if there's any shot in the trees, and like in the bark and stuff, and I'll do that when I get a chance, but I just wanna let you know that that's there, and I just thought. It might be wise, at some point, as a town to sort of. especially going into a hunting season, is to reinforce good hunting practices. Something we can think about at this point, so it's kind of late in the game this year, but.
Gerhard, they actually contacted me
Oh, really?
about it, and when I learned the location, I was like, oh, you're right next to Gerhard and the game inspection station. Hoping that perhaps you.
I've heard something, yeah, and I didn't. hear
And you
anything.
hadn't attended, they
And I
know the
can't imagine.
timeline of when it happened.
Right.
So it would have, it was short enough, so maybe you would have remembered, but I
Oh, yeah.
think it's concerning. I believe the sheriff's department came out, am I correct?
I don't know.
I don't, I'm not.
They don't tell me when they're
not-
coming out, so I have no
not-
idea.
Talked with
Okay,
the property owner, but that doesn't mean it has to
They were
happen.
here recently.
they were here
They
recently.
told me a couple of different occasions,
So
but
it could be,
Yeah, so I didn't hear anything, and I'm having a really hard time. I mean, there's some hunting that goes on here that. One reason I like to crossbow hunt and not, get into gun season, because there's some hunting. Practices around here that I don't think are very good,
yeah,
but this is what I'm having a really hard time seeing, if somebody is that irresponsible as possible, but. I don't even know what she'd be shooting at. I mean, the depth of the woods is from here to the window on the other side of the road, so. What would you possibly be shooting at? So-
There are many questions that could surround that, and I think with looking at what happened, the fear initially when I heard about it was, is this a targeted attack?
Yeah,
But I think that's fear speaking.
yeah, well, I talked to the individual, I said, do you have anybody in your life that could possibly have, issues with you? And not that they're aware of, so.
So I would tend to, in reflecting after thinking about it for a while, it does seem to me likely an act of vandalism.
Yeah.
An opportunity, and so,
Well, the scary thing is that there's right behind the car was a house.
yeah,
Nobody was in it, but.
yeah,
but sometimes people are in it.
Right.
Some people.
and it's illegal. It's
Yeah.
illegal discharge of the fire.
So disturbing news.
Disturbing.
Yeah. Thank you.
you jinxed us with the bad news comment.
Yeah, but she was first on the scene for the bad news.
But Maine has the third lowest crime rate in the country,
Yay.
statistically.
That we know.
We know.
So, all right, I have to actually go back over tonight, so I'm gonna buzz out of here soon, but,
We go into executive.
that, we have an executive session,
We
right?
have to
Oh, do we?
approve the minutes first.
Yeah, no,
We
I,
can skip it.
so anyway,
We can
first of
talk to
all,
you individually.
to
No decisions.
approve the minutes of the November 5th, 2025 meeting, and Chris provided those to us.
So,
Okay, second, any corrections or changes? Okay, all in favor, ta-da. And then items for future agenda, we just heard Mike Morse at Waldo Point, and, I think the
South Shore Drive.
South Shore Drive. Is there anything else that's on people's minds? I think we'll give you an update on the Stone Pier. Kind of, what the engineering firm is doing.
And hopefully an update on Bennett's Cove.
Yeah, if we have
Progress
something,
there.
yeah. So I think sort of maybe an update on the town infrastructure projects would be good, and then, so,
I think the town boat research, the sounds of it
Yeah.
might be something that is coming to.
The
your
town
agenda.
oh, good.
The research for a town boat.
The rescue boat.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't mean, I can leave and you can still do the executive session. Oh, so do we approve? We did approve the minutes,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, I'm not saying don't go into an executive session, but I'm gonna actually go home so Herb can drive me to the boat, but if you guys can still do that if you want.
It'll take 2 minutes.
Oh, well, then
It's
just,
just something that I want to update you on briefly.
all right, so,
Chris, see you later.
I have, can somebody make a motion that we move into executive session
I'd like to move that we go to executive session.
for,
For, MRSA. 6A personnel.
right,
Second.